Let me take you straight into the moment everything in my marriage snapped. The door wasn't slammed. It was clicked shut, soft, calculated, final. She didn't pack a bag. She packed perfume, lipstick, and confidence. She didn't say goodbye. She said, "Don't wait up." And on her way out, she slipped off her wedding ring and left it balanced on the rim of her wine glass, still half full from the night before. That's how I knew. Not from a text. Not from catching her in the act. Just the metallic clink of that ring hitting the glass and her voice behind it. "Tonight, I'm single." She didn't look back. She didn't flinch. Like she rehearsed the line in her head and finally gave herself permission to say it out loud. I could have said 100 things. I said one. "Not tonight. From this day on." She paused. The door opened. One heel outside. I watched her hesitate, just for a second. She thought I'd chase her. I didn't. Because for the past 7 weeks, I'd been building a private folder. A quiet collection of dots I was connecting, screenshots, strange transactions, late night calls labeled work. I wasn't being paranoid. I was building a case. What she didn't know? That same morning, while she was at yoga, my phone had buzzed with a photo from a friend who didn't even mean to send it. It was Mara, not in gym clothes, not alone, and not wearing her ring. So when she smirked and said, "Tonight, I'm single," I already knew she had been for a while. But this isn't a story about a ring or one night out. This is a story about what she did, who helped her, and how far I went to make sure it never happens to anyone else. What I discovered the next day changed more than my marriage. It changed everything. The morning after she walked out, the apartment felt like a museum of fake memories. Her makeup still dusted the bathroom counter. Her phone charger was coiled neatly by the nightstand, like she meant to come back. But I didn't expect her to, and I wasn't planning to wait. I logged into our shared laptop, the one she barely used anymore. I wasn't trying to spy. I just wanted answers. Something. Anything. To help me make sense of that smug look she gave me before disappearing into the night. What I found wasn't dramatic at first. A browser tab left open to a vacation rental site. Not unusual. Except the dates were booked weeks ago. Not in her name. Not even in mine. But a name I recognized. Someone I'd never met, but had seen pop up on her texts once or twice. A guy she swore was just a marketing lead from a previous project. Yeah, that guy. His name was on the booking. Hers wasn't. But she left her Gmail logged in. And curiosity, even when you hate it, is louder than pride. That's when I saw the list. A draft email, unsent, titled "My Freedom Plan." It wasn't written like a love letter. It read like a war strategy. She'd laid out her steps: emotional distancing, financial separation, friend group soft launches, and a carefully timed narrative she planned to spin if I got weird. Those were her words. "If Elliot gets weird, just say he's been spiraling emotionally. People already believe that stuff when men do it." That line stayed with me. She'd already counted on me reacting like a ghost, like a coward. She thought I'd just fold and disappear while she reinvented herself as the brave woman who escaped a sad little husband clinging to routine. Except I wasn't spiraling. I was documenting. And I wasn't going to let her burn the house down and hand me the ashes. By noon that same day, I had 3 calls lined up: a divorce attorney, a financial advisor, and someone I hadn't spoken to in years, her sister. Because what Mara didn't know, what she never even imagined in her perfectly curated little plan, was that her biggest secret wasn't hidden in her messages. It was standing in her own family tree. And that secret was about to break everything wide open. I hadn't spoken to her sister, Danielle, in nearly 2 years. Not because we fought, quite the opposite. Mara always found a reason to keep us apart. Looking back, I realize now that every time Danielle and I started talking too much, Mara would conveniently have a family emergency or complain I was getting too close to her side. At the time, I thought it was about boundaries. Now I know better. When Danielle picked up, her voice sounded surprised. Cautious. "Elliot, everything okay?" I said I just needed to ask her one honest question. And I promised not to get angry, no matter what the answer was. There was a pause. Long enough to make me feel like she already knew what I was about to say. I asked, "Is Mara seeing someone?" Another pause. Then her voice cracked. "She swore you two were separated. She told me not to tell you." The words hit harder than I thought they would, and not because I didn't expect them, but because Danielle sounded genuinely guilty. Like she'd been dragged into something she hated. She told me Mara started acting different around 6 months ago. canceling on family dinners, cutting people out, bragging about some new vision board, and how she was going to be a completely different person by summer. Danielle said she asked her, flat out, if she was cheating. Mara just laughed, said, I'm not cheating. I'm just getting what I deserve for once. But here's where things took a turn I didn't see coming. Danielle asked if she could send me something. A voicemail Mara left her accidentally weeks ago. It was meant for someone else, her marketing guy, but it hit Danielle's phone instead. I told her to send it. She hesitated, then did. I played it. And in the space of 44 seconds, everything I thought I knew about my wife shattered. Because it wasn't just flirtation. It wasn't even about me. She didn't mention my name once. What she said was this: I've already set it up. I get the apartment, the social narrative, and his guilt. That man will apologize while I take everything. It wasn't a confession. It was a victory speech. She had planned this like a campaign, down to the emotional manipulation, the carefully framed public posts. She wanted to break me just enough that I wouldn't fight, but not so much that I'd disappear. She wanted me humiliated, but obedient. But what she didn't know was that this wasn't a story where I collapse. Because that night, I called the attorney back and told him to proceed. Not with just a divorce, but with something she would never see coming. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. Anger would have been easier. But what I felt was something deeper, like the floor beneath my life had quietly rotted away, and I was just now noticing I'd been standing on air. I kept playing the voicemail over and over. The way she said his guilt, like it was a tool, not a feeling, not something human, just a tactic. I remembered the day I proposed to her, how her hands were shaking, how I thought that meant she was overwhelmed with love. Now I wonder if she was just calculating the odds. I had the attorney draw up the paperwork, but I told him one condition. I didn't just want the standard divorce. I wanted a clean record of her manipulation, proof. So we did something she never expected. We froze the accounts before she could move anything. She called me 2 hours later. Not to apologize. Not to explain. Just to ask why her card got declined at a salon. That was the moment I knew she was never in love with me. Not really. You don't say, "Why didn't you warn me?" as your first sentence to someone you supposedly shared 6 years with. I didn't yell. I told her the truth. That I knew everything. That I had the recording. That I had the draft of her freedom plan. That her sister knew. That I wasn't going to play the broken man in her story. Silence. Then she laughed. A short, stunned, bitter laugh. And all she said was, "Wow. You really turned out colder than I thought." She hung up. 5 minutes later, I got a message request from someone I hadn't spoken to since our wedding. Ben, one of her old college friends. The kind of guy who always hovered around too long, offered too many playful compliments, and was always the first to like her photos. He said, "Hey, I think we should talk." I didn't know it was this bad. And suddenly everything inside me went still. Because this man, this smug, flirty guy she swore was just a harmless old friend, was about to tell me something. And I already knew I wasn't going to like it. Ben's message sat in my inbox for 20 minutes before I opened it. I stared at his name like it was radioactive. I didn't want to click. Didn't want to read what I already suspected. But curiosity is a cruel thing. When I finally opened it, the first line was just, "I swear I didn't know she was still with you." That made me laugh out loud. One of those ugly, bitter laughs that's half disbelief and half exhaustion. Of course he knew. She posted curated pictures of us all the time. The matching Halloween costumes. The vacation at the cabin last spring. Her anniversary post where she called me her lighthouse. But the next part of his message hit different. He said she told him we had split 6 months ago. That I was struggling mentally. That I refused therapy. And she felt unsafe in the marriage. Those were her words. She told him I was unraveling, paranoid, controlling. That's how she cleared the path. Not just to date, but to do it guilt-free. She didn't want to cheat. She wanted to be seen as the one escaping something toxic. Ben said he believed her, because she said it with so much pain in her voice. And now that he was seeing the fallout, the financial freeze, the sister turning on her, the voicemail, he realized she hadn't been the victim. She'd been the architect. But here's the part one didn't expect. Ben offered to help. Not in some pathetic, make-amends way. He told me, in detail, how she had used the exact same strategy once before, with someone else. A different ex. A guy she'd dated before me. She told Ben that man was emotionally unstable, too. Said he stalked her. The reality? She had hacked his accounts, drained a joint savings account, and ghosted him while living with someone new. She had done it before. She knew exactly what she was doing. And now, I wasn't even the first. Ben said he was done with her. He even offered to forward their texts, photos, dates, everything, to help me build my case. I said yes. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick, because part of me still wanted it not to be real. But it was. All of it. And then, just when I thought I couldn't be more shocked, I got a knock on my door. It wasn't her. It was someone she lied to even more than me. And what he told me, it made me realize this story wasn't even close to over. When I opened the door, I didn't recognize him. Mid-30s, button-down shirt, eyes scanning me like he was still trying to process what he'd just done. He introduced himself with one sentence that froze the air. I think we've both been living in her story. His name was Lucas. He said it quietly, almost like he was afraid the walls would judge him. I stepped aside and let him in. No words. Just a weird shared energy, like we were both walking into a crime scene we didn't commit. He sat on my couch like it wasn't the first time he'd been in that apartment, but it was. And that's what made me uneasy. Then he showed me the messages, the photos, the flights, and finally, the lie that connected everything. She told him I was her landlord, that she was renting a temporary place from a friend of the family while she finalized her divorce from someone else. She even used our living room in the background of her calls, telling him she loved the feminine touches and couldn't wait to move out once the paperwork was done. And the worst part? It worked. He believed her. For over a year. He thought I was a distant figure, some off-screen character in a bad breakup story. He didn't even know my name until a mutual friend of theirs, someone who followed both of us on social media, accidentally liked one of my photos. That was when he saw the tag. The caption, our wedding anniversary post. He said his stomach dropped. And to confirm his worst fear, he reverse image searched one of her selfies and found an old wedding blog. Our wedding. The one she said never happened. And now he was sitting in my living room, holding a broken phone full of screenshots and apologies. He wasn't angry. He was gutted. He said, I'm not here for revenge. I just needed to know I wasn't insane. I nodded, because I understood that better than he could imagine. Then Lucas asked a question I didn't see coming. Did you ever meet her therapist? I blinked. She never had a therapist. He leaned forward slowly and said, yeah, she did. At least, that's what she told me. And apparently, she told the same thing to someone else, too. He wasn't the only man she was seeing. There was a third. And if what Lucas found out was true, that man was the reason she started all of this in the first place. Lucas stayed for over an hour. I don't think either of us really knew what we were waiting for. Maybe a punchline, or some final piece that would make the rest of it make sense. But what we uncovered instead was a rabbit hole with no bottom. After he left, I opened a new browser window and started digging. If she had mentioned a therapist to him, by name, there had to be some kind of trace, right? Maybe even a real person she twisted into her fantasy. But no, the name she gave him, Dr. Eliza Kern, didn't exist. No license, no listing, nothing. I even checked the fake email address she used to schedule calls with Lucas. It wasn't a therapist. It was her. She was impersonating her own therapist. She was sending him follow-up advice. She was writing progress reports. She was even using burner numbers to confirm appointments. She'd fabricated a whole second identity just to maintain her story, to give it structure, realism, and emotional authority. And the worst part? Lucas said it helped him process things. He thought he was growing with her. This wasn't just cheating. It was emotional stagecraft. She was building entire worlds for each of us, keeping them separate, airtight, until something slipped. And now, according to Lucas, something had. One of the text threads he uncovered during a routine phone backup mentioned someone else, a third man. A name I'd never heard, but Lucas had seen it in two places, in a saved contact and in a bank transaction Mara had tried to delete. The transaction was for a hotel room, paid in cash, under a fake last name that matched the therapist's initials. Same hotel she once said was where her mother stayed during treatment. I checked my own records. That was the weekend she said she was attending a wellness retreat. Everything was a lie. But here's what truly broke me. That third man. According to Lucas, he's not a stranger. He's connected to my job. Not a coworker, not someone I see daily, but someone in my industry. Someone I've met. And if that's true, then she wasn't just cheating for love or escape or power. She was gathering leverage. Relationships, stories, alliances, each one carefully managed, updated, maintained like a web of puppets she controlled from behind the curtain. But that curtain was ripping, one thread at a time. I didn't confront her with rage. That's what she would have expected. Another messy scene she could twist into a new version of her story. Another chance to paint herself as the victim of a man who couldn't let go. No, I waited. I waited until I had everything. Copies of her texts with Ben, screen recordings of the fake therapist emails, and yes, confirmation of the third man, someone from a conference I attended 2 years ago. He was never part of our life, just someone I shook hands with once. But that was all she needed to turn it into leverage. So I invited her to meet in public. Neutral ground. A coffee shop near the river she used to like. She arrived late, of course, sunglasses on. That same smirk from the night she took off her ring. But this time, I wasn't flinching. I thanked her for coming. Then, calmly, I slid a folder across the table. No drama, just facts. I watched her face shift as she flipped through it, from boredom to panic, and finally, to this quiet, stunned kind of stillness. She didn't say a word. When she looked up, I was already standing. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just done." And I meant it. The divorce went through without a fight. I got my space, my sanity, and, surprisingly, the quiet support of a few people I never expected. Even Ben and Lucas, two strangers tied to my pain, helped me rebuild. We stayed in touch for a while. Not because we needed to trauma bond, but because we all agreed. Sometimes, the only way to win is to walk away with dignity and let the truth rot on its own. Now, I live in a smaller apartment. I bike to work. I sleep better. I smile without forcing it. I'm not bitter. I'm grateful. Not for what she did, but for what I finally saw. Sometimes closure doesn't come in a dramatic moment. It comes when you stop needing one.